Okay, so thank you so much for spending your evening here at the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office. We're excited to talk about a topic on protecting Indigenous peoples' health in Taiwan and beyond. We have two great sections of speakers today, so we're going to get started. And before we do, we have some opening remarks from Director Lee, Director General, Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in New York. So I'll let him kick it off.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Tom Chih-chiang Lee. I'm the Director General of Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in New York. And I want to welcome all of you. This year, we always have this seminar about this time, and we try to align with the theme of UNPFII. And as MC just mentioned, this year's seminar, the theme is protecting Indigenous Peoples' health in Taiwan and beyond. And probably, I guess people from Taiwan, you are all aware, but some of you from United States, probably you have no idea. In Taiwan, in total, we have 16 different tribes, and they have their languages. When one tribe meets with the other tribe using their mother tongue, they cannot communicate with each other. And they also have a magnificent culture. But long time ago, they could not use their indigenous names to register on their ID cards at that time. And then roughly about 30 years ago, we modified the law. And they could start using their names on their ID card. And now their rights are protected. But they still face some challenges, especially in health and access to medical care. That's why in Taiwan, our government has been working very hard to try to promote telemedicine. To connect people in the remote area with specialists, especially for those people, indigenous people living in a very remote area. We have made some progress, but there are still some limitations, such as like a digital divide, some technical requirements. So we still have a long way to go. So I guess today, this is a very good platform for us to learn from each other. So I hope you enjoy tonight's discussion and also the delicious Taiwanese food we prepare. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Director Lee. I feel like this is going to be a very meaningful conversation. And I'd like to hand it over now to our keynote virtual speaker, Helu Chiu. Director Helu Chiu works in the Social Welfare Department at the Council of Indigenous Peoples. So we'll give it up for Helu Chiu.
Hello everyone, Yakuo Helu Chiu. My name is Helu Chiu. Today I will be presenting on Indigenous health and well-being. There is one key message. We are moving from general health policy toward the cultural-centered health system. We have established culturally grounded care model with 532 cultural health stations across indigenous and urban areas, service more than 18,400 others. We have brought health service directly into community. In 2025, over 2.37 million blood pressure measurements were conducted, supporting others' self-health practices in their daily life. Safe environment are the foundation of culturally grounded care. We have agreed more than 800 cultural health stations. We aim with investment at over entity 1.5 billion. As a result, life expectancy among indigenous people in Taiwan has increased by around 5 years over the past 20 years, and health disparities are improving. We have trained more than 1,600 indigenous medical professionals, empowering indigenous professionals to service their own community. We have also trained over 300 cultural safety instructors, integrating cultural safety into healthcare, education, and government systems. The Indigenous Peoples Health Act has been enacted. This elevates Indigenous people right to health from policy to law, and institutionalized cultural safety. Looking ahead, we will continue to strengthen Indigenous health services, build culturally grounded health systems, and strive toward a health Taiwan. Thank you very much. Mahuai su balai.
Okay, and on that note, we're going to kick it off for the first panel series and fireside chat, which will focus on law, community, and care in times of crisis. This will be moderated by La Peets, who is a PhD candidate in law, and is from the University of Washington and studies at the School of Law. The guest speaker will be Zuni. Zuni is a project manager at Shofeng and Township Indigenous Health Empowerment Center. So I would like to welcome them to the stage. Okay, and on that note, we're going to kick it off for the first panel series and fireside chat, which will focus on law, community, and care in times of crisis. This will be moderated by La Peets, who is a PhD candidate in law, and is from the University of Washington and studies at the School of Law. The guest speaker will be Zuni. Zuni is a project manager at Shofeng and Township Indigenous Health Empowerment Center. So I would like to welcome them to the stage.
Today, our topic is law, community, and care in times of crisis, protecting Indigenous Peoples Health in Taiwan and beyond. I'll do like a lecture first for a few slides, and then I'll interview my friend from Hualien. Okay, let me get started. So that is like a recap. For this year, the 25th UNPFII, the theme is ensuring Indigenous people's health, including in the context of conflicts. So what kind of conflicts that we have? So the past few days, I found that even that we are in different regions, but our Indigenous people, we shared the experience that we had. So the conflict between Indigenous people and the government, the conflict between Indigenous people and different people. It's like so many types of contexts of the conflicts that we have. So it's a really good forum for us. And there are 6 mandated areas of the permanent forum, and this time we are focusing on health. So what kind of issues, like the current health issues that they are talking about and they are focusing on? Diabetes, life expectancy, poverty, and TB, and the poor level of health, especially for Indigenous women, like reproductive health. The resources are lack in most of the Indigenous regions. And poverty and malnutrition. And self-determination, that's something that we are focusing on in many panels and health systems. So I'll focus on the right to health, like Mr. Cho mentioned in his keynote about the right to health, and we make it to the policy to laws in Taiwan. So what are the international law sources of the right to health? So according to United Nations Declarations of the Right of Indigenous People, we have Article 23 talking about indigenous people have the right to determine and develop priorities and strategies for exercising their right to development. In particular, indigenous people have the right to be actively involved in developing and determining health. And then there are many things else. And also, Article 24, which is very important, that indigenous people have the right to their traditional medicines and to maintain their health practice, including the conservation of their vital medical plants, animals, minerals. And the second session, talking about indigenous individuals have an equal right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. Next, in Taiwan, almost, 21 years ago, we passed a law, the Indigenous Peoples Basic Law in Taiwan. And Article 24 talking about that the government shall formulate public health and medical policies for indigenous peoples in accordance with the characteristics of indigenous people. And the second, respect the traditional medicine and health methods of indigenous people, which reflecting to what are the international laws that we have. And allocate ample funding in their budget to subsidize indigenous people who need medical care and the emergency care and evacuation to nearest hospitals, social welfare institutions, and also some other like the health system, long-term care. And Article 10 of the Indigenous Peoples Health Act we passed 3 years ago. They try to ensure that the medical service are provided in indigenous peoples' regions reside and to provide a stable supply of indigenous healthcare workers. The central competent authority shall work with the Central Education Authority to determine the needs of indigenous peoples. So sometimes we feel like the problem is when the government try to have a new law or new policy, the government may not know what the indigenous people think. What they really need, what they really think. So it's so good that we have these new laws to require the government to have the resource to really walk into the tribe, work with indigenous people to be partnership with them to make decisions. Okay, and cultural safety and indigenous people's health, that is really important, and that is something that we are going to focus on today. How to secure cultural safety? This is a big question because it's so hard. Because what is that? You have to have the cultural awareness first, and you see you need to respect the different cultures, and then we have to think how to secure this cultural safety. So the definition of the cultural safety refers to ensuring the indigenous people receive fair and equal access to health care and are provided with appropriate health services that are grounded in indigenous people's knowledge system and provide adequate protection of indigenous identity and culture. And so in the Health Act that we have, we also try to ensure the cultural safety, to have the cultural safety courses to train the social worker, even the medical professionals. So medical institution, nursing institution, senior welfare institution, long-term care institutions, they are include many things of that. Yeah, try to include the idea of cultural safety. And next is about the languages. Because sometimes when we are trying to communicate with indigenous people, they have their own languages, not the same languages as I have. So we need to have someone to translate, but language is not only saying their languages, it's not only the word that we learned, it's about the culture that we have to know so we know how to pass the messages to them. So that's why the cultural safety courses will be very important. And then traditional medicine, like we talking about the plants, the food that indigenous people have it for many, many years from the knowledge of the ancestor. But we keep the traditional medicine as something that they can use or it's a choice of them. So research and to promote the development of traditional medicine and a healthy lifestyle. Okay, so now I'm going to be a moderator to interview my friend Ludwig, and she is from Hualien. So can you introduce yourself first? 先介绍一下你自己。
Ini tuh kita ngai ho, ji lungi pegungangan lumaku.
I am the English Mandarin interpreter. Unfortunately, I do not speak any indigenous languages. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Okay. And do you want to also introduce like where you are working? Like you are working in Hualien. 你现在的工作。
直接讲这些吗？我是在台湾花莲，在从事寿丰乡部落健康营造的工作，主要是在做健康促进。
我这边有几个问题想要请教您，就像我们刚刚提到，我们有新的法律，但是在执行上常常会遇到很多困难，或是其实它有很多挑战。那就您的经验，在健康营造中心的经验，如何增进原住民族的健康，尤其是他的文化健康？
So in your work in Hualien, in the health promotion centers, even though we have these new laws that are supposed to support indigenous health, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in the enforcement and in improving indigenous health on the ground?
在我们自己的部落里面，我们其实是部落都是以家庭为一个单位。那我们其实是透过长期的陪伴，跟透过各式的活动，让家庭能够串联起来。
So in our tribes, we are in the family unit, and we maintain these relationships with these family units with long-term care and companionship.
在家庭跟家庭之间串联起来之后，他们其实是成为彼此的一个健康支持的系统。
So once the families are connected with each other, they become a health support system.
那我们希望能够把我个人的健康变成是我们一起的健康这样的一个概念，来让部落的族人能够知道。
So we are trying to work from an individual concept of health to a together concept of health, and we're trying to pass that on to our tribes.
那我们再透过就是互相陪伴跟鼓励，然后让我们族人能够透过慢慢的实践、长期的累积，变成一个健康的生活习惯。
So through long-term companionship and encouragement, we're trying to build healthy habits to encourage our tribal members to participate in a healthier lifestyle.
那同时，我们也希望能够把受照顾者还有就是服务提供者能够做一个串联，所以我们在活动当中也会邀请就是服务提供者来让两方都能够知道，当我需要帮忙、需要协助的时候，我可以找谁。
So we not only work with the people who need the care, we also work with the caretakers. And in all of the events that we have, we allow the caretakers to communicate to the patients in understanding how they can best ask for help.
那其实这个长期的一个陪伴，就是我们在跟部落的人建立关系。那这个建立关系，它其实是需要长期，然后很多的各式的活动，才能够让我们彼此建立这样的关系。那也是透过这个关系的建立，取得我们彼此的互相的信任。 那我们透过这样一个信任基础，才能够把我们想要提供的一些健康的资讯，还有我们的政府的一些政策、健康政策，来提供给我们部落的族人。
So it is through this long-term care and connection building that we are slowly building connection, building trust within the tribes. And over time, with that relationship building as a foundation, we are then able to pass along healthcare information and also share government policies with tribal members.
很谢谢你的分享。那除了刚刚提到这个关系的建立需要长久的一个关系建立的基础以外，在部落里面也有所谓的年龄阶层 SLA。我想要请你就是谈一谈这个部分。首先就是年龄阶层到底是什么？
So first, so based on this long-term care and connection building, I understand that there's also an age group system within the tribes. Please share a little bit about that.
在台湾阿美族部落里面，基本上都有所谓的年龄阶层。那以我自己的部落为例。
So in the Amis tribes in Taiwan, there is a concept of salat, of age groups. So in her own tribe,
我自己的部落里面呢，我们基本上男孩子只要年满12岁到18岁，就会进入到年龄阶层。
So boys in her tribe, once they become 12, between 12 to 18, they enter the first age group.
那进入到这个年龄阶层的时候，他必须经过一系列的训练。那这些训练可能包含了狩猎，包含了植物的采集，然后还有就是部落的伦理。还有我们的传统祭歌等等。
So once they enter into the first age group, there's a series of trainings that includes hunting, that includes gathering of fruits and plants, that includes the tribal ethics, and also the tribes' songs. 祭歌，like a traditional songs for sacred ceremonies.
这个年龄阶层基本上就是因为他们会一起经过长期的训练，所以他们的情感会非常的紧密，对。
So these age groups, because they spend a lot of time together as a cohort, they build a strong emotional bond with their cohort.
那我想请问一下，那这个年龄阶层在应用在我们想要去实践增进原住民族的健康，这个部分，你能不能告诉我们一些故事？就是除了您刚刚提到的，解释说什么是年龄阶层以外，我们想要知道说它应用上面是，怎么样子？就是现在就是真正发生的事情，对。
So you shared about the age group and we want to understand a little bit more about how this impacts, how this helps in improving healthcare outcome and in actual application.
年龄阶层它其实是一个就是部落传统的一个年龄阶层组织。那它其实从你进入到年龄阶层，要一直到56年之后，你才会退下来。对，那我进入到年龄阶层，它其实就是部落一个文化传承的开始。那我进入到第一阶层，我要学习的是我要如何服务所有的人，所以包含了我们的最基本的场地的整理、环境的准备、器具的准备，这些等等，都是最年轻的阶级要做的事。
So once you enter the age group, this is a traditional unit, and once you enter, you do not retire out of the age groups until you're age 56. And this is the beginning of the passing on of the cultural heritage within the tribe. And as you enter, the first thing you start doing is that you learn that you are serving the people. So the youngest age group works on setting up for events. They are in charge of equipment. They start with the most basic service for their community.
那等到他有时间8年过去了，有 更年轻的阶级要上来，那所以他呢就要进入到第2阶。那他在进入到第2阶之前呢，他的哥哥们就会教他第2阶要做的事情。
So after 8 years, they graduate to the next age group, to the next cohort. So before the younger group comes in, their older brothers in the older age group then teach them about the coming learnings.
那同时，他们在进入到第2阶，他们也必须要带领第1阶的年轻的弟弟们，要学习怎么去服务。
And once they enter the second age group, they then in turn have to teach the first age group how to serve the people.
那这样子的一个年龄阶层的训练，它其实是从他一开始入阶，一直到他退休，就一直每年都会进行。
This age group system begins at age 12 and continues until they're retired.
所以它是长期的一个训练。变成就是培养我们年龄阶层里面的默契。那所以当部落发生事情的时候，其实他们是可以很快速的就马上进行分工，然后把事情妥善的做一个处理。
So this is a very long-term kind of training, and it builds a sort of chemistry amongst the cohorts, and this enables very rapid response in times of crisis. Tasks are distributed very quickly and very efficiently.
就是去年有发生那个风灾，就现在气候变迁，所以有很多没有办法预期的一些灾害。那能不能够稍微提一下这个部分？
So last year, in recent years, because of climate change, with the typhoons and other natural disasters, we are encountering some of these challenges. Can you share a little bit about that?
去年我们在花莲这边就有发生一个非常严重的台风，然后堰塞湖的事情。那我们其实年龄阶层在这个风灾的过程当中，他们是在外界的帮助的进来到部落之前，部落年龄阶层就已经开始在运作，就很快速的把就是部落的名单，还有需要的物资，然后哪里需要帮忙这些等等的资讯，把它建立起来。
So in Hualien, we had a massive typhoon last year, and with a lake overflowing, and the age group system was able to respond in such a way that before outside support even came in, they were able to quickly make a list of all the people involved and all the resources that are needed, and very quickly direct people to help.
那在目前已经是灾后的200多天，但是这样的一个就是灾害恢复的一个动作，其实一直都在进行。那在灾后呢，就是部落的年龄阶层也开始在进行心灵疗愈的这样的一个健康的工作。
We are now over 200 days post-disaster. And the recovery process is ongoing. And at this point, the age groups are actually working on mental health recovery.
如果没有这个长期的一个就是陪伴跟我们的关系，我觉得在这件事情发生之后，可能部落很难有一个很完整、快速来去解决事情的这样的一个组织。对，那所以呢，就是因为部落有这样子一个传统，所以他才能够很快速的把事情分工做好。
Without this type of long-term companionship and care, the tribes would not have been able to not only very comprehensively but very quickly respond to these disasters in an organized manner. And so these traditions have enabled us for a fast and thorough recovery.
真的很谢谢这个你跟我们的分享，这样子其实大家就可以看到说，我们虽然有法律和政策在那边，可是其实当真正要执行的时候，还是需要了解，就是部落里面他们的文化到底是什么，我们才能够真正贴切的把资讯正确的传给他们，也能够让不管是在健康或者还是在其他政策都好，就才能够让他们是在更舒适的环境下面，或者是资讯更丰富的状况下做出好的决定。
Thank you for your sharing. As you can see, no matter the laws or the policies that are established, in order to effectively execute these laws and policies, we have to deeply understand these tribes' cultures so that we can provide the accurate information, the appropriate healthcare, or other types of support in a way that is comfortable and accessible and that is respectful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. That was such an impactful conversation, and greatly appreciate your perspective. And with that, I'd love to shift it over to our second session of panelists, covering the topic of health care and land rematriation in times of crisis. So this topic, we will have three empowering guest speakers. Our first guest speaker is Lily Joy Winder. Lily Joy is a DNA and New Southern UT advocate who just finished her master's at Stanford University in their Earth Systems program. She's primarily focused on Indigenous climate solutions and sovereignty. Lily Joy's public advocacy for Native people primarily extends to her 300,000 followers on socials, public speaking, and film acting. Behind the scenes, she has worked on policy initiatives, developed social media campaigns, and consulted from the lens of indigeneity. Our second guest speaker is Eva Brander Blackhawk. Eva is a Western Shoshone scholar, philanthropic professional, and community leader. She currently serves as a program associate at the Decolonizing Wealth Project, focused on Indigenous-led climate work and tribal land return led by BIPOC LGBTQ youth towards mental health work. As an undergraduate at Columbia University, she served as president of the Native American Council and helped to found Indigi House, a residential community space for Indigenous students on campus, and the first space dedicated to Native people at Columbia. Her service extends across the philanthropic sector, and she sits on the advisory committee for Natives in Philanthropy's Indigenous Tomorrows Fund, centering Indigenous youth voices and grant making, focusing on food sovereignty, and she also serves on the board of the American Indian Community House. She holds a BA in economics and anthropology from Columbia. Our third speaker is Celio Montero Jose. Celio is a Mozambican environmental advocate and social entrepreneur dedicated to climate justice, youth empowerment, and community-driven sustainability. He is the founder and executive director of EcoHope, a youth-led organization based in Manica province that promotes agroforestry, regenerative agriculture, and environmental education. Through EcoHope, Celio has supported women farmers, engaged students in climate action programs, and led community restoration initiatives that strengthen both livelihoods and local ecosystems, impacting more than 2,000 people in his community. He is also the board member at the Human Impacts Institute, and we're really lucky to have him here today, all the way from Mozambique. So I will welcome our guests up to the stage.
Lily Joy Winder Yinishia. Thank you so much, Dolly, for the introduction. I'll be kind of guiding our conversation and asking our wonderful panelists a few questions, but first I'd love for you guys to add any more to your introduction really quickly.
I think it was pretty good. I just sent it to Jolly this morning, so it was pretty up to date. I work for Decolonizing Wealth Project. We're a philanthropic intermediary, so we do grant making, and we also work with foundations and donors. Then I'm also a board member at the American Indian Community House, which is here in New York and was founded in 1969. And I do a few other things, some advisory committee service, proposal reviewing, but I think those are the top lines.
Thank you. Oh, hi, it's working. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jolly. Thank you so much, Lily. My name is Celio Montero Jose. I am from Mozambique, and I'm the founder of EcoHope. So EcoHope is a youth-led organization working mostly in sustainable agriculture, but specifically with rural women farmers and also young people. I'm currently in the US doing a fellowship, and I'm working at a nonprofit organization that it's focused on urban farming and food sovereignty. especially with marginalized communities. I am also a researcher at a nonprofit called Y Labs, and I am currently working on a project in Mozambique focused on sexual and reproductive health rights. And I am the board member of the Human Impact Institute. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Also to say a little bit more about yourself, because I put you guys on the spot a little bit. I just finished my master's at Stanford University in their Earth Systems program. I did my BA there as well in their Racial and Ethnic Studies program with a minor in Native American Studies. I'm Dinesh Southern Youth from the southwestern part of the United States in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And really grateful to have this conversation with you. I come from an environmental justice background. I'm very interested in tribal-led climate solutions. So I guess I'll start with you, Eva. You're Western Shoshone, and you've been doing this work in New York City. From founding Indigenous House at Columbia to now working at the Decolonizing Wealth Project, how did you go from campus organizing to literally redirecting money towards Indigenous communities? What's the through line for you?
Thank you for the amazing question. Yeah, so I'll tell you guys a little bit about Indigenous House. So Indigenous House is a residential brownstone at Columbia. It can house 15 students, and they live there throughout the year. So instead of living in a dorm, they live in this community together. And I think Indigenous House was one of my first experiences in grant writing, I would say. We were writing a 10-page proposal to the university to get this space. And after decades of alumni engagement and advocacy, we were finally successful. And I think for me, one of the biggest lessons coming out of Indigenous House was seeing what is possible when we adequately resource communities. Youth need a space to be themselves. They need a space to dream, to host events, right? And so I think for me, that was really a powerful moment of look what can happen when we actually give youth resources and space. And now I work in philanthropy, giving youth money. And I think there again, I see that through line as you need the resources to be able to support yourself and your community and your work. And when we do that, it's incredibly powerful. Less than 0.4% of philanthropic giving in the United States goes towards Native American communities. And something I've heard other people say that I just love is Native people have been working with pennies for so long. Imagine what would happen if we gave them dollars. Right.
I love that so much. I feel like a lot of the work that I do is about dreaming as well and framing Indigenous people not from a place of lack, but a place of expertise. And I feel like that also really aligns with your work, Celio. You grew up in Mozambique, studied forest engineering, and you've been documenting things like community gardens and how communities are stewarding land without destroying it. Can you paint us a picture of what it's like on the ground? What does sustainable stewardship actually look like for you?
Thank you so much. First, it's really good to be here with you guys because you're amazing. So the first project we did at Eco Hope was a project focused on environmental education. And we got a small grant, and we wanted to work on schools first, but we couldn't, so we started working on a neighborhood. And while that was happening, we really wanted to work with agriculture, because in Mozambique, agriculture is the basis of development. So we got a grant to implement a project called Planting Prosperity. And Planting Prosperity is a project focused on empowering rural women farmers to ensure that they have access to technical support, seedlings, seeds, etc. So to ensure that they farm in a way that is good for them. One moment that made me really think about sustainable stewardship is when we were doing the harvest for the first season. So what happens is that we were working with an association of women farmers, and they have one community garden where they all farm together, and they also have their private gardens. And in the garden that they all farmed together, we worked with them to establish an agroforestry plot. We had beans, we had cassava, which it's called corn here in the US, but we also had moringa trees, which are medicinal trees that they chose to plant in those gardens. And after the first produce grew, we were doing the harvest with them, me and my team, and I saw this little girl, I think she was 4 or 5 years old, and she was with her mother doing the harvesting with her. And I thought that was fantastic because that clearly showcases how traditional knowledge in Mozambique is passed down through generations. That little girl, she knew what to do. She was harvesting, and I remember thinking with my colleagues, like this is sustainable stewardship. It's not going to school, it's not getting a certification, it's not in the manuals, but it's something that is being passed down through generations. And although all of us, we were students in their environmental sector, and in school we learn about all of these indicators of success, how many trees you plant, what quantity of carbon those trees are sequestrating, sorry, biodiversity index. But I think that being on the field, specifically in this project, made me realize that the biggest indicator of success is seeing other generations on the field. And I feel like in Mozambique, that's what sustainable stewardship looks like.
I love that. It's community and family as infrastructure for the solutions that we want to see in the world, and I'm hearing that from both of you. This is a conversation about rematriation, and a lot of those conversations have to do with the phrase land back, which can kind of be nebulous to a lot of non-Indigenous people, and also mean different things to different people. So can you talk a little bit about what the definition of rematriation or land back is for both of you, coming from different places in the world, and what you think it could look like in the future?
Sure, I'm happy to get us started. So when I'm talking about land back, I am talking quite literally. I think we should acknowledge that much of the US, right, is illegally occupied territory. A lot of this is unceded land, and a lot of these treaties were made under negative pretenses, right? We have a fund through my job that supports California Native tribes in the return of land. And we're often talking about privately purchasing land back. And in the last year, our grantees have seen the return of over 100,000 acres, which is pretty incredible. And so I think a lot of what we do is not only the grant making, so giving capital to make that happen, but also the technical assistance, because land return is really complicated, especially in this country. It's really complicated from a legal standpoint between state and federally recognized tribes, and it's incredibly difficult to raise that capital. And I also want to acknowledge that for tribes to have to privately purchase land that was stolen from them is also not justice. And so I think ideally we would be seeing the donation and the return and this land given back. But until that happens, tribes are willing to purchase this land back if that will mean that they have the rights that they deserve.
I completely agree. I think it's also about restoring a relationship, and it's so much of what the United States has done is to disrupt that relationship, and we cannot build a just and sustainable future without ignoring the first injustice that took place on United States soil, and many places across the world resonate with this aspect as well, which I'm very excited about in terms of what the future can look like. And I love what you said about Indigenous people have been working with pennies for so long. Imagine what they can do with dollars. There is so much brilliance in investing in Indigenous people as in their relationships, as the relationships in many ways is data that has been collected since time immemorial. Generations and generations have been building these relationships. And so for me, land back is also about putting the land in the hands of the experts, of people who have known these lands for so long. Anyway, love what you had to say about that, Eva. And I'd love to bump that question back to you as well, Celio. What does rematriation mean for you in the context you come from? And does land back resonate at all with you as well? And what does that look like for you?
Thank you. In Mozambique, unfortunately, the term rematriation is not often used. And the biggest problem in Mozambique, as I said, agriculture is the base of development, and women are the backbone of agriculture, basically. I think 80% of the agricultural force is composed by women. But in Mozambique, the land is owned by the government. And what happens is that often rural farmers don't actually have access to the land. So if you have, and in Mozambique we have this culture of families owning land and garden, and that being passed through generation. So if you have a piece of land and most of the people don't have the documents stating that that land belongs to them, so if the government has any interest on that land, and if they want to put a mining company, for example, they can take you out of it in seconds, and you don't get the benefits of being put in another place, or even getting a resource for you to start your new life. That is the biggest problem that happens. And if you analyze it through a gender lens, it's even worse, because women really don't have land titles. When they produce food, most of the time they don't have access to the money that comes out of it. So that is the big problem. And at Eco Hope, unfortunately, we're not working to equip rural farmers on how they can get access to documents. This is something that we want to do, because there has been projects that were working specifically on that, but they stopped. So if there's no organization working with these farmers to help them have land titles, and the government is also not doing that, it's very hard, and it's insecure for the farmers. Yeah.
I love what you said, and I also love that you touched on the aspect of women as land stewards as well in this conversation about rematriation. It's also important to look at Indigenous communities. Many women are essential to land practices, land stewardship. In the work that I do, I really analyze the relationships, the kinship ties that Indigenous women have with the land, and how it's so important to protect Indigenous women as a form of climate resilience. Even looking at the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, focal point is on health, and reframing health of Indigenous women as just, oh, this is a charity handout we need to do, this is some obstacle that we need to overcome, but thinking about Indigenous women as incredible experts that are facing disproportionate rates of sexual violence within the United States, and this is also a global issue. Indigenous women are going missing, being murdered. In parts of the United States, Indigenous women are 10 times more likely to be murdered, and we need to protect people who are protecting our lands and have those relationships with the land. So I love what you said about women. I love that what your work is with women. Eva, I know that you also have an incredible passion for Indigenous women land stewardship. So I also wanted to ask Celio, you have had, sorry to take it back to you immediately, but I am interested in hearing a little bit more about, you have this incredible you got a education in forest engineering, but you also talk about how the importance of community and land. Where do you see kind of more traditional science and traditional ecological knowledge meeting in your work, and where could that be applied across the world and in the places that you come from as well?
Thank you. I think, unfortunately, nowadays traditional knowledge is not valued as much, and there's a really focus on tech and globalization, and that can really be a problem. But I think that what we do and what we can do as activists is documenting the work that we do and documenting traditional knowledge and ensuring that we're able to showcase to the society and to policymakers that this traditional knowledge is what has been happening, what has been done to our land. As you were saying, these women have been farming in this land and taking care of the land for years and years. And this is the most cheapest and scalable adaptation strategies that they have. So why can't we actually fund and recognize this knowledge and ensure that policies such as national adaptation plans, for example, also mention the traditional knowledge. So I think that's the future. I think we should work towards that. And I'm pretty sure that's what we're doing and contributing to that.
Beautiful. Eva, the Decolonizing Wealth Project funds things like land return, as you mentioned, and truth and healing initiatives. From your vantage point, managing those grants, what approaches are actually working and what makes a land or environmental health project succeed versus stall?
Thank you. Yeah, I think we ask ourselves this a lot. Being an intermediary funder, we want to steward these resources the best way that we can. And especially in this political moment and with so many federal funding cuts, a lot of our grantee partners have seen tens of millions of dollars cut from the federal government. And so while this is really a moment where philanthropy can step up, I think it's also worth acknowledging that landscape. And so we're asking ourselves, what can we do with these limited resources and how can we have the biggest impact? And I don't think there's one answer, but I also really want to convey the message that as much as things are difficult right now, there's also a lot of successes, and I think unexpected successes. The fact that last year alone, our grantees rematriated over 100,000 acres, right? In the last 2 years, I think our grantees have rematriated over 300,000 acres, which is pretty incredible. And sometimes these successes happen in places that might be unexpected. We also fund a lot of reparations work, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma, last year, they committed $105 million towards reparations. And so I think Tulsa, Oklahoma may not be the first place that you would guess would be really on board with reparations, particularly under the Trump administration. So I think it's moments like that that are really just bright lights in this moment and kind of remind us that, success is possible and we need to keep dreaming and staying ambitious about our goals.
Incredible. Can you say that acreage number one more time? I think that people missed it. That is so much land.
Yes, yeah. And there's a few kind of particular large projects that have made up a lot of that. But yeah, in the last 2 years, our grantees have rematriated about 317,000 acres.
Can we get a round of applause for that? That is incredible. Amazing. Well, there is so much hope between you two, and I think on this panel, which is very exciting and heartwarming in these politically turbulent times. So to also end on a note of hope, if you could wave a magic wand, what would be the most helpful and exciting thing that could help advance your work and help your communities as well?
Thank you. Great question. If I had a magic wand, I think that I would ensure that there is trust, in the sense that the people who are in power, quote unquote, actually fund what matters and fund people that are on the ground doing the actual work, like what Eva is doing, for example. And I'm pretty sure she faces she was mentioning there's a lot of challenges in that. And she also mentioned the stats of how much is the amount of funding. And it's the same for Africa. The amount of funding, it's very scarce. So we have to work with pennies, as she mentioned. And I think that, especially being a youth-led organization, so I think that if I could build that trust in people and ensuring that the resources were actually being applied where it matters, that's what I would do. Yeah.
Thank you, I love that. Yeah, I think something that I really want to draw people's attention to is the importance of Indigenous languages. I think our earlier speakers brought up that point. And I think Indigenous languages are just so critical because language shapes your worldview. Language is the philosophy, right? It deeply affects your psychology. And especially for Indigenous people, there's that incredible connection to the land and to history and ancestral knowledge. And these languages, they're facing a pretty dire moment right now, right? And so I think I would love to see more funding going towards language revitalization and more people kind of really doubling down on those efforts. I think a lot of funders, it might not fit as neatly into areas such as climate or health. And so I think I would really just make that connection that, you know, the land cannot be healthy without the people being healthy, and it's a reciprocal relation, right? And language is a really big part of that. It's kind of the glue that creates that trust and creates those relationships.
Wonderful. Well, if I could wave a magic wand, I would have everybody be able to listen to perspectives like yours so much, both of yours. I think we're in a moment where we need hope. And I think there's so much hope to be found in Indigenous communities. And if I could wave a magic wand, that would be resourced to do the work that to continue the work that we have been doing since time immemorial, and that we'd have people's ears. I want to see this hope in Indigenous communities on billboards, on screens, and to take on the dominant narrative that we know about climate change. We have all the solutions. We just got to implement them and undertake a bold agenda that includes Indigenous land stewardship. So I thank you all for this wonderful panel. Could you guys share how people could find you after this panel and beyond, how to follow your work?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, Eva Brander Blackhawk, and then also, yeah, Decolonizing Wealth Project. We have a donor community called Liberated Capital. People can join at any giving amount, and we do some exciting programming, and that's really one of our kind of core donor bases.
I'm also on LinkedIn. It's Celia Montero Jose, LinkedIn and Instagram, and Eco Hope also has a page on LinkedIn and Instagram. It's Eco Hope Mozambique. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm also on LinkedIn, both at lilyjoy.winder on Instagram and LinkedIn. Well, thank you all for a wonderful night, and I'll pass it. I think it's time for food, Jolly, is that correct? Or I'll pass it back to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's give one more round of applause to all our wonderful guests tonight. You guys are amazing. And maybe let's just take a collective breath. You know, I feel like those were some really important and heavy topics we just covered. So maybe you could just all take one deep breath in and out. Okay, well, thank you all for being here. We are excited to continue the conversations. And before anyone moves, let's take one picture. If we can maybe do one from the front. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And we have some amazing Taiwanese cuisine provided on the back. And you can continue the conversations with one another. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, maybe before the cuisine, we can also invite all the speakers and the panelists come to the stage, and ambassadors and the distinguished guests from the mission. We take a group photo first.
Good idea. Sorry.
Yeah, please come to the stage. Don't be shy. Okay. Enjoy the night. Thank you.